These are in listen-only mode.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'd like to thank you for joining me this morning as we spend the next hour taking a look at the PointCentral administration website. This is a site that allows you to manage your PointCentral software, and we'll discuss a wide range of topics today. But first, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Stephen Lang. I am a professional services banking consultant here at Calix Software. I've been in the mortgage industry for over 13 years and have spent much of that time working with Calix Software. Just a few quick notes here and some housekeeping details. All attendees are muted for today's webinar. It would be helpful to have Point as well as your PointCentral Admin website open, possibly on another monitor so you can follow along. Ask questions via the questions box located in your GoToWebinar control panel. The PowerPoint presentation that you're seeing now is available for printing also in your GoToWebinar control panel, and we will have a recording of this webinar that will be on our website and will be made available just as soon as possible. Quick legal disclaimer: the information presented is confidential and proprietary to Calix. It may not be disclosed without the permission of Calix. The purpose of this PowerPoint presentation is to provide information rather than advice or opinion. It's accurate to the best of my knowledge as of today's date. The extent that this presentation contains any examples, please note that they are for illustrative purposes only, and any similarity to actual individuals, entities, places, or situations is unintentional and purely coincidental. In addition, any examples are not intended to serve as legal advice. No part of this presentation may be modified, printed, or presented without the permission of Calix. Just a quick overview of our format today. We'll take a look at this PowerPoint that has some overviews and highlights of the PointCentral Admin site. Then we're actually going to jump into the PointCentral Admin website, take a look at users and user groups, data folders and access rights, reports and configurations, and we may highlight on business rules just briefly, but we do have another webinar this afternoon at 2 o'clock Central that will be dedicated specifically to writing and applying and testing business rules. Also have some helpful resources for you along with tips, our knowledge base articles, and options for some further training if you feel that it's necessary. Today's webinar will show you how to add and edit users and user groups in PointCentral Admin, add and edit data folders, understand the importance of user access rights within those data folders, show you how to utilize reports for a summary of users, user groups, and access rights. Ideally, will allow you to use the configuration settings to manage your security settings, your field IDs, data folders, and more. So logging into PointCentral Admin is done via the web, and you should have a screen that looks very similar to this as you make your way to that web page. The navigation panel that you're going to see when you log into PointCentral Admin will have the navigation panel on the left-hand side, as well as helpful links for the knowledge base, PointCentral release notes, and a link to our Calix support website. As we go through the PointCentral site today, we'll be taking a look at a few of the options available to you in your navigation panel, and we'll be starting at the top and working our way down. Adding users is really the first option that you have, and just a quick tip is to remember that when you're adding usernames, make sure to add the name as it will appear in the PointCentral software. It's important that these match both in PointCentral software and in the admin site so that the two systems can communicate effectively. We'll show you how to input user IDs and passwords, and this is also where they can be set for new users. You also have access to your user list. This is where you have the ability to view all of your current users, edit the user information, reset their passwords. If needed, you can edit usernames and user IDs. You can also view group memberships, view data folder access rights, and if needed, delete users. User groups would be a part of this PointCentral Admin site that allows you to assign access rights to a large group of individuals with likely the same level of responsibilities. And this can be used in place of individual access rights for users. In this user group navigation setting, you have the ability to edit the user group names. You can add or remove individual users from these groups. And if needed, you can delete user groups. Data folders and access rights is likely where we'll be spending a lot of time and probably answering some questions for folks today. Data folders are really the backbone of your organizational file flow. The data folder access rights do play a major role in your overall compliance strategy, and knowing how to effectively copy folder settings and access rights between these data folders can be a real time saver in managing your day-to-day activities as they pertain to your PointCentral software and your utilities settings. Template set access rights. We'll take a quick look at this today. Templates like closing cost scenarios and loan programs are added in Point, but they're managed through the administration site. The template set access rights allow users or user groups to edit and view these specific templates. Users can access these templates from several different areas in the PointCentral software, including your templates tab, your utilities menu, and the print function. We'll take a look at the reservation section here in PointCentral Admin as well. And this is used in the case that you may have a user that's been in a file too long and perhaps somebody needs to access that file. And so from time to time, it may be necessary to cancel a reservation, and we want you to see how that's done and where to get to that function. There are several various drop-downs in our configuration menu here in PointCentral Admin, and one of those is the parameters. The parameters menu allows you to adjust certain settings within the admin site as well as Point. This allows you to reset your PointCentral Admin password, set user password expirations, set a amount of time for lockout periods as well as number of failed login attempts. Also allows you to set the time for the lockout for the reservations. In PointCentral Admin configuration, we also have the ability to view the available Point fields. This allows you to see the field IDs with descriptions. Also within the configuration menu, as we're looking at Point fields, we can take a look at custom fields and IDs that you may have created for your custom screens. Also, you can rebuild and synchronize your custom fields with your data folders. In the configuration menu, we also have the import function, which allows you to import data folders, users and access rights, template sets, and Cardex databases, and we'll take a look at those. Folder maintenance is a function within the configuration menu that allows you to move data folders to the conventional side of the server. These data folders would still be available to you within PointCentral Admin, but you would no longer see them as part of your data folder set in the PointCentral software. Template maintenance really does the same thing. It allows you to switch templates possibly that you're not using any longer to the conventional side of the server. Again, this would still be available to you in PointCentral Admin. You just wouldn't have access to it within the software itself. If you need some additional help after we finish with this webinar, we do have some knowledge base articles that are out there for you. A few of those would be helpful if you're wanting to create users or user groups, update additional fields, assign access rights to template sets, adding users to user groups, or to rebuild template sets. As we look at Point today, which will kind of bounce back and forth between the admin site and Point itself, you know that you can hit F1 from any screen in the Point software and it will bring up a help menu that's directly related to that particular page. We also have our Point user guide that's embedded in the software. www.calixsoftware.com for support. Customer support can also be reached by phone at 1-800-342-2599. And account managers can be reached at 800-362-2599. If you feel like you'd like some consulting or professional services, please get with your account manager and they can set that up for you. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and take a look at our PointCentral Admin site and really just take a more in-depth look at each of these tabs here on the navigation panel that we just discussed as we were going through that slide presentation. And so you can see that the first tab that we have is your Users tab. And here is where you have the ability to add users, list your current users, or to cancel locked out users. So let's take a look at how to add a user. Again, here we have the full name of the user that, again, we would suggest for originators would match their NMLS license. Again, this needs to match what you're going to have in your utilities drop-down list for originators in your Point software. Okay, so if there's a middle name or a middle initial that you're including on the 1003 loan application, make sure that we have that included here for the full name of the user. User ID can be added here as well, and of course we recommend that that's your user's email address because that seems to be the easiest for everybody to remember. A password that you can set up here should be likely as an administrator you're going to be issuing this as an initial password for that user to then change as they initially log into the Point software. You see we have the access here for Point, and if you have them set up with Point Mobile, you could assign that access as well. Email address is the final field here, which should be added also. Let's take a look at how we can utilize some of the functions here as we list all of the users. We do have the ability here to make edits to the user information, including name, user ID, whether they have access to Point or Point Mobile. Secret questions, again, that's going to be based on your originators, your processors, your underwriters, and set that up. So if you do need to reset passwords, then you have that function there. Of course, the update key here will allow you to update this information when changed, and you have the ability to update passwords if they should need to be changed. You also have the ability here, as you go through this users page, to see all of the groups and that these users are part of. For instance, an administrator group. Back to our users main menu, let's take a look at the locked out users. And this would be in a case if you have a user that has too many failed login attempts and they're locked out, you could cancel that lockout. That way the user could get back into the system. Let's take a look at our user groups, and adding a user group is fairly simple. You would simply type in the name of the user group that you wish to add. I'm going to go ahead and list the user groups that I have set up here, and I think these are pretty common. I've got an administrator user group, a branch manager user group, loan coordinators, originators, processors, secondary marketing user group, and an underwriting user group. You can have as many or as few of these as you feel necessary for your organization. And from this user group page, you have the ability to edit or delete these. Again, you can add certain users to this particular user group from this page. And again, have the ability to delete these user groups if you're not using them or feel that they're just not necessary. We'll take a look at data folders, and I think this is where we'll likely spend a bit of time going through access rights and so forth. To add a data folder, again, much like a user group, simply adding the name of the data folder. Where you're really going to get into a lot of work here is as you list these data folders, you have the ability to see the order that these fall in. And again, this is the same order that you're going to see as you go into your Loans tab in your Point software. The order can be arranged here simply by clicking the up or down arrows. and putting them in the order that you wish to have them in. If I want to move processing up to the number 2 spot, I can simply click on the up arrow or down arrow to move it back to my number 3 spot. Editing your data folders will allow you to do 3 or 4 functions that are going to be crucial to your day-to-day activities. Your data folder name and the order, again, this is the order that you're going to see it in your Loans tab in your Point software. Auto file naming, we typically only want to use our borrower auto file naming. If you're still using the prospect side of your Loans tab for data folders, then certainly you can enable the auto file naming for that as well. I typically suggest we only allow auto file naming for our primary or our origination data folders. And depending on your organization, you may have one or multiple primary or origination data folders. In this case, we typically like to set our auto file name to 10 digits, and this is what allows us to remain MERS compliant. We can use 2 years, 2 digits for the year, 2 for the day, 2 for the month, and then a counter of 4. And we would always want to update any changes we make so that they're applied to our software the next time we log in. As we scroll down, we can see that we have several different groups that are part of our Twin Falls origination data folder. We have administrators, originators, processors, and underwriters that are all parts of this group. We have the ability here to delete a particular group from this data folder or to edit their access rights. We also have the ability to add individual user access rights as well as individual or the ability to delete individual users if needed. Before we take a look at access rights, I'd like to take a look at the copy folder settings function and the access rights. Using the copy access rights will allow you to, once you have your primary origination data folder set up, if you have another primary origination data folder, say for a second, third, or fourth branch, you would be able to copy the data folder settings and access rights from that data folder. Okay, so if I want to copy my data folder access settings from my Oak Hill branch, I would simply select that and click copy. I can also copy settings such as defaults and drop-down list. This is an important function because if you have different users for, say, portfolio loans versus secondary loans, or if you have multiple branch scenario, and you have, again, different functions in your utilities menu for drop-down list and company defaults, you would likely want to only copy settings from one primary data folder to all of your subsequent data folders, such as processing and archive folders. Okay, so let's take a look at access rights and how they apply to the Point software. Let's edit the access rights for the administrator and take a look at the options that we have available to set this up. You can see that we have the loan view as our first option here. And for an administrator, we may want to say all loans. If this was an originator, we may only want that originator to view their loans and not other originators' loans. Certainly, this is where we would have the ability to make that change. If this was a processor or an underwriter and they may only process or underwrite for a specific originator, we may want to say a certain individual, and that would be whose files they could see. And we would add them just below there. Okay. Also have the ability to remove them below as well. This function is typically more popular as you're setting up individual access rights rather than group access rights, especially for underwriters, processors, and so forth. Loan access, edit or read only. Again, if we have a user that may be in a compliance function and may need to only view the file and not make any changes to it, we may want to assign read-only access. Again, if this is an originator, an administrator, a processor, or an underwriter, we would likely want to assign edit access. Our conversation log, a very important feature in the Point software. We have the ability to limit what can be done here as far as adding items, editing items, or deleting items from that conversation log. Document storage, as it applies to our document management system. And this is the little file cabinet that you see in your Point software where you can drag and drop PDF files, Word documents, loan documents. This is where your credit report and DU findings would be populated as well. Here we have the ability to allow or restrict access, have the ability to add documents, edit documents, delete documents, and of course that doesn't mean to, as far as editing documents, that doesn't mean you can change what's on that document. It's what allows a user to utilize the extract function, meaning if you have 4 pages and want to extract 2 pages out of that, having the ability to edit that document is what allows you to do that. The ability to delete documents, obviously, that may be a function that you want to keep limited to admin, emailing, printing, and saving documents. Again, these are functions that can be restricted as necessary depending on the individual user or the user group. Our next section, loan management, as we look at operations. These are the functions that you're going to see on your Loans tab in your main menu, giving an individual user or a group the access rights necessary to copy loans, move loans, delete or email loans, save as 1003, and the ability to export and import Fannie 3.2 file. The box below that, allow offline file creation, is a great function that will allow your user to create a file while they're not connected to the server, possibly in an instance where they don't have the internet access, maybe at an open house or something of that nature, would allow them to save that to their local file, and then that would import to the server as soon as they're back online. Our utilities menu, company defaults, drop-down list. We like to allow edit access on our primary data folders, so changes can be made, but we like to restrict the access on all of the subsequent folders, and we'll take a look at that in a little greater detail as we move forward in a way that will hopefully make sense for everyone. The Audit Trail, again, this is the function in our software that allows you to see all the changes that have been made to the file and by whom. Again, we like to be able to view this in most cases. No access is also available if we want to restrict a user's rights to that audit trail. As we scroll down, we can see that we've got our tracking menu that you would see in the file for tracking registration and rate lock, the trust account, and the loan profit and loss. Here we have the administrator with full edit access rights to the registration and rate lock, the trust account, and the loan profit and loss. If this was a originator or a processor, we may want to say read only in certain cases or edit in other cases. The trust account, that may or may not be an area of our tracking that you use. Again, with the admin, here we have edit access rights. Loan profit and loss, we have the edit access rights as well. And then our banker screen functions, underwriting, closing documents, shipping, secondary marketing, fees and impounds, conditions, warehouse and purchase advice, recording, and trailing documents. We do have edit access rights here for our administrator, and we'll take a look at the possible access rights that you might want to assign to an originator or a processor or an underwriter in a primary data origination data folder, as well as subsequent folders such as underwriting or processing or an archive data folder. Let's go ahead and take a look at our data folders one more time. And as we work through these data folders, you can see that in this particular case, we have two origination data folders, one for the Twin Falls branch and one for the Oak Hill branch. And it's likely that we have separate company information and separate originators for both of those branches. We're going to take a look at this now as you would see it in Point. You can see that we have our Twin Falls branch and our Oak Hill branch. I'm going to really go through this in a way that will allow you to see how we have the utilities set up here. And so we're in our Twin Falls branch, and if we go to our utilities menu, take a look at our company defaults and our company information, you can see that we have our first branch here as Oak Hills and or Twin Falls, pardon. And you can see that we have our company information here as it would appear in our utilities menu. When we go to our Oak Hills branch and search that, we would go to our utilities menu as well, go to our company defaults, company information, and you can see that it's exactly the same. This is because we have copied our settings from Origination Twin Falls to Origination Oak Hill. Let's take a look at this and see how that's done. We've copied our folder settings, again, from one to the other, and this has copied all of the information that should be different. So when we're setting up the utilities menu, what we should do is first is copy our settings, okay? Then we would want to go back into our software and update that. So now we may say Oak Hill branch, and update that. Now the necessary changes have been made to distinguish your Oak Hills branch from your Twin Falls branch, while at the same time making sure that the rest of your company defaults, such as your privacy policy disclosure and your other disclosure utilities here, are remaining the same. Let's take a look at our originators for this origination data folder. We're going to edit our user access there. And you can see that we have slightly more restricted access rights set up for our originators here. This particular originator can only see his or her own files. They still have edit access to the data folder, as this is the origination data folder. In the conversation log, they can only add items. They do not have the ability to edit or delete. In document storage, they have the ability to add and edit documents, but not delete documents. They also have the ability to email and print documents, but not save. Again, for a particular organization, whether it's large or small, as an administrator, this would be your call to set this up how you feel is necessary for your user groups. In this particular situation, we have not given these particular originators the ability to copy or move loans, delete or email loans. We have given them the ability to save as a 1003, which allows them to copy the 1003 data, also allow them to import and export from a Fannie 3.2 file. The originators at this branch do not have access to the company defaults or the drop-down list, but they can view the audit trail. They do have access to the registration and rate lock, but no access to the trust account or the profit and loss. They do have read-only access rights on underwriting and closing documents, no access on shipping. They have read-only access on secondary fees and impounds and conditions, but no access on the warehouse and purchase advice, recording, or trailing docs. As we continue to work through our data folders, you can see that we've really moved in the order of our origination from application to processing to closing. You can have more than one folder for closed files if you'd like to separate out your closed and funded versus your denied and withdrawn. But a lot of times what we suggest is to allow the system to make those distinctions for you. In other words, all of your statuses can be sorted within the data folder. So if you have all of your closed and withdrawn files in the same archive folder, the status can be used to differentiate between the two rather than having a separate data folder. You'll likely have more than one archive folder as the years go by, and this is where your copy setting for access rights will come in especially handy. Once you set up your access rights for one archive folder, you're not likely going to reassign those for the next archive folder that you create. You would simply assign those from one of your other archive folders. Let's take a look at our processors' access rights for this archive folder. Processors can see all loans. They have edit loan access because that's going to be required to move the data folder or move the file from one data folder to the other. They still have the ability to add items in the conversation log. They have the ability here in an archive folder to add documents and print documents. We really don't give them much of an option here to export, import, save. We may want to allow them to move loans, and we may allow them to save as 1003 in the event that they need to recreate an application later on down the road. Company defaults, drop-down lists, no access, but we may want to assign view access rights for the audit trail. No access on registration, trust account, loan profit and loss, although we may want to say read only on registration and rate lock if they have to go back and take a look at the file. We could do the same thing for trust account. We're probably going to say no access for a processor on loan profit and loss, though. Again, we may have a processor that wants to go back and review an underwriting decision, so we may say read only. Closing documents, read only. Shipping, we're likely going to say no access on a processor, but again, depending on how involved your processors are, you may want to assign read-only access rights on several of these banker screens. Secondary marketing will say no access. Fees and impounds can be read-only. Conditions could be read-only. Warehouse and purchase advice, probably no access for a processor. Recording, this is an archive folder. If this is my closed and funded folder, I may say edit access for recording and trailing documents. But for an archive folder such as this, we'll just say read-only, and then update my group access rights. Let's take a look at the template sets. The template sets are managed much the same way that the data folders are. Here we have a list of the template sets, and for you, you probably only have one, and that's going to be your Calix default template. If you have more than one template set and need to organize those, you can simply use your up and down keys here. That's going to determine where you see this. Okay, so if you have more than one template set and this is to be viewed by the particular user, you can again arrange where this falls on your point screen. You do have the ability to edit access rights for the template sets, and you can do this with individual access rights or with group access rights. Again, with admin, you're probably going to have full access rights. Here you can see we don't use prospect master files, so no access rights there. Can assign them if you wanted to. These template sets will give you access rights again in several different areas as we're looking at loan programs, closing cost scenarios, prospect and borrower master files, the ability to import templates and export templates, custom forms. All of these are going to be found in your templates tab, and we can take a look at that in the Point software as we go to our templates tab. Again, this is what's going to give you access rights to all of these areas: reports and marketing, loan programs, closing cost scenarios, prospect and borrower master templates, the ability to data import and data export, and your custom forms, letters, and emails. the escrow tables, print groups, reports, title tables, escrow accounts, home to register information, docs due in. These are all going to be found in your utilities menu, along with your auto min generation and additional utilities. With the Cardex database, again, generally speaking, you're not going to have the need to add a Cardex database. You should have one that's already set up. In an instance where you may be moving from Point to PointCentral, it's likely that you're going to want to import that Cardex database, and you can certainly do that. That function has to be done through the Point software, and again, that's done through your Cardex itself. You would have to be in an actual loan file, access your Cardex database, use your file, and then export to Calix PDS. What that allows you to do then is, if you're on Point moving to PointCentral, you can export this to your Point data server and import it then to your new PointCentral sites. Next, we have business rules, and we can take a look at the business rules. Again, we're not going to get too in-depth on this at the moment, as we will be having a webinar this afternoon that is going to be dedicated specifically to business rules, how they're applied, how they're written and tested. Within the rules here, you can see that we have several pages of Calix default rules that are made available for you. Initially, when you have the software, again, you do have the ability to add as many custom rules as you'd like to have. They can be edited and managed here on your PointCentral admin site. And again, these can be enabled or disabled if you write a particular rule and find that it's not working for you. Certainly, our advice is don't delete the rule. Simply go in and disable the rule. That way it won't apply any longer to any of the users. Or you can simply edit the user access and remove the users. You also have the ability here to add individual access rights as well as group access rights for the business rules. Let's take a look at the Reservations tab, and we don't show any active reservations here right now because not in any files. Again, if had an active file open, that would show as a reservation. Go ahead and see what we can pull up here and open one of these up and see if we get that to show up, and then we'll indicate how you can cancel that reservation. Now you can see that we have the active reservation showing up. So if we wanted to remove the user from that file, we would simply delete that reservation. Now another user that may need access to that file can certainly get in it. Our next tab here at PointCentral Admin site is the status. And this status page shows all of the changes that have been made. You can see that some changes have been made to our folder settings. Okay, as we were working on the origination folder for Twin Falls branch and Oak Hill branch. This would really just allow you to track all of the changes that you've made within PointCentral Admin. That's useful from time to time, as you may have a change in administrative users to know really what was done at what point in time. The status function here in the PointCentral Admin site is, the reports function here in the PointCentral Admin site is going to be really helpful to show you for any number of users and the groups that they're affiliated with. Here we've got users, and it shows the groups that they're affiliated with, secondary, origination, processing, and so forth. A good rule of thumb is not to have more than one group assigned to a particular user. In other words, if you have administrative rights, don't assign yourself also to an origination user group. And this is a good report that would allow you to see or to just ensure that you have one group per user. User effective access rights here. we could key in a user ID, for instance, and it would allow us to look at that particular access rights for that user. We also have the rules that are applied for that particular user as well. The same function applies for data folders, groups, access rights. Again, here you can see that we've got the particular user groups that are allowed access rights to each particular folder. Template sets are the same thing. Again, we can look at the user group or the individual user that has access rights to each particular template set. Let's take a look at our configuration menu. We're going to start by taking a look at the parameters. Here you have the ability to update or change the username and password for your PointCentral Admin site. A few other features of note would be forced password expiration. For instance, we may want to force password expiration every 30 days, 60 days, or 90 days. Make sure you click Save. Failed login attempts. We may want to allow our users to miskey their login 5 times before they have to reset their password. Lockout period is 15 minutes. We may want to change that lockout period to 30 minutes. We may want to change it to 5 minutes. Reservations. Okay, so as we were looking at the reservations earlier, this system will allow you to set the amount of time for a timeout on the reservation if the user is not active in the system. 30 minutes, an hour, that's up to you as an administrator what you'd like to set that timeout as. Daily rebuild of the template set archives. These are automatically rebuilt daily at 2 o'clock in the morning so that we're not slowing any users down. If you have quite a few files in the system, and make sure you have that setting for some time when you're not going to have any users accessing the system, or as few users as possible. We do have the Audit Trail, again, enable tracking of field changes and document actions, and that's going to apply globally for all files within all data folders. Also in our configuration menu, you have the ability to delete your Cardex database. Not quite sure why you necessarily want to do that, but we do have the ability there. Point fields. We have several functions here. We have our supported fields. Again, this will allow you to see the field ID. Okay, in this case, field number 11 is the base loan amount. Tells you the type of field that it is also. This is handy if you really need to get an idea of all the fields available and specifically what the name of that field is. Also in the point fields, we have custom fields. All the custom fields would be added through your custom screens. And we can take a look at how and where to do that in the Point software. If you're in your Utilities menu, you can go to your custom screen settings and you can choose a custom screen and assign custom fields. These custom fields can be used for business rules, they can be used for reports, and again, you would simply update those in PointCentral Admin by clicking the Rebuild Custom Field. This would synchronize those custom fields with all of the data folders. Additional fields that you can assign field IDs to can be done from your additional fields function in your parameters menu. Again, when you're going to be rebuilding additional fields and synchronizing these with the data folders, If you have quite a few files in PointCentral, make sure you're doing this at a time when you're going to have as few users as possible on the system. Your import function is going to be handy if you've ever moved any files or data folders to the conventional side of the server. So here we would have the ability to import data folders that we may have moved to the backside of the server. Here you can see that we have old data folders that are still on the server. We just don't see them in the drop-down list. So if we wanted to send Dallas Underwriting, for instance, back to our data folder set, we can select that and import the data folders. If we go to our data folders now and list our data folders, you'll see that we do have Dallas Underwriting back on our Point data folder drop-down menu. The same can be done with users and access rights, template sets, Cardex databases, and users from a file. Again, this function is used anytime you have any of these templates or folders sent to the backside of your server. In other words, if we wanted to import an old template set, we could certainly do that as well. Folder maintenance, the synchronization again will synchronize the fields within the data folders. Switching to conventional, this is what we just took a look at. This is what allows you to switch data folders to the backside of your server by saying switch to conventional. So we're going to take Dallas Underwriting, move that to the backside of the server. Now we're not going to see that show up on our data folder dropdown when we log into Point. Template set maintenance, very much the same. Here we have the ability to look at the different template types available. Again, this is just a brief report that shows you the name, the subdirectory, the file extensions, and the Point screen location. Also in the template set maintenance, you have the ability to copy template sets. This is handy, again, if you've got a multi-branch scenario and there are certain templates that you may need in one particular branch or one particular origination group, but not another. You have the ability to copy that template set from one user group to another. And finally, the ability to switch to conventional. Again, we have several different template sets here that are set up, and we may not be using one of these, so we can always say switch to conventional and move that to the back side of the server. I'd like to take a quick look at the help menu. Again, you have your PointCentral knowledge base. Once you click on that, it's going to take you to our website that will give you any number of great topics on the PointCentral admin site. Again, we have our latest PointCentral release notes, as well as a link to our Calix support website. So I want to take a few minutes, we've got about 10 minutes left, and open it up for questions of any kind. Feel free to key those in and be more than happy to answer those for you.